Quillan Salkilld has followed an extremely similar path to now welterweight champion Jack Della Maddalena, and it's actually pretty scary how similar their paths have been. Both suffered defeats in their opening fight. Jack Della Maddalena actually lost his first two, and both are undefeated since then. Both blazed through Australian promotion, Eternal MMA. Both won and defended belts in that organization, which has seen a lot of talented fighters enter the UFC, but still, can Salkilld follow in that kind of trajectory? Today, we're gonna have a look at some of his highlights on his path to getting to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and then we'll have a look at his awesome UFC debut. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode of Career Highlights on Quillan Salkilld. Salkilld did have a brief amateur career. It spanned 3 years, competing in 11 fights across the globe, but primarily in his home country of Australia. He'd have an impressive 7-3 amateur record and conclude with a rear naked choke submission win, where he'd enter the professional ranks of Eternal MMA in the beginning of 2021. As previously mentioned, he would lose his first pro fight in his debut pro fight, being submitted in the second round and looking way younger than he does now, but nonetheless, he would bounce back from that loss at the end of 2021 with an impressive guillotine choke, showing off some of the submission skills that he really has a part of his bag in mixed martial arts. Zooming ahead to 2023, Salkilld would be an impressive 3-1, bouncing back from the loss in his pro debut. He would land a first-round knockout to begin the year, and then in the summer of 2023, he would get a title shot, matched up against Blake Donnelly, who was 7-1 at the time and a pretty good athlete in himself, and Quillan Salkilld would go out there and starch him in under a minute. Salkilld would step in, and then when they broke apart, he would land a massive left hook, and then from there would land brutal ground and pound, separating his opponent from consciousness and claiming the lightweight title for Eternal MMA. He would then match up against a game Brett Pastore. Brett would try to get the fight to the ground early, but Salkilld would defend the takedown attempts and actually use the scrambles to land some of his own damage. And what was really impressive in Salkild's first title defense here was that in the championship rounds, Salkilld showed what really UFC champions can show in those last 10 minutes, where he was taking his opponent down, brutalizing him with ground and pound, kind of going away from trying to get the finish and just switching into a mindset of domination, and he would end up getting 50-45s across the board in his first unanimous decision victory. And he would be 5-1 at this point, and the UFC would seriously be considering bringing him in. However, this would be his first decision of his career, so it would take one more rear naked choke submission in the second round against Don Marfan, and he'd let it be known after winning the fight that he was looking for a contract, and Dana would oblige. He'd set him up with a main event against Gage Young, another talented lightweight out of the US regional scene. I have another video on his opponent, Gage Young, a very tough grappler and a good striker in Gage Young, and it would match up to be a remarkable Contender Series contest. Fight would be back and forth early, with Quillan getting the favorite line coming in. It was actually much closer than anticipated, but it was that 5-round experience of Salkilld where he would dominate the third and final round, putting a stamp on the performance, getting unanimous decision win. And honestly, because both guys fought so hard, Dana White would give Salkilld the contract on the night, and then Gage Young would be in the UFC just a little bit later. And then Quillan Salkilld would have his UFC moment on a pay-per-view. He would take on Anshul Jubilee, and he would knock Jubilee out in under 20 seconds on Duplin 2.
There's the advantage.
There goes Curious.
Wow.
Announcing himself with a performance of the night finish, and that he could be a prospect to mess with at 155 pounds. Now, that'll do it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed, smash that like button, subscribe to Combat Sports Central, and I will see you in the next one.